Okay, we are connecting to YouTube. Okay, so YouTube is connected, so just greet anyone who might be joining us. We'll be starting the show really soon. We got we'll call it a special show today. We got just Joe solo. So we're in the stretch run. We're at the end of a long campaign. The man has been busting his ass. It's been awesome to see, and we think he's going to win. I do. I know. I hope Joe does.
I always think I'm going to win.
You're going to win. The right man. So, yeah, I'm just going to connect the chat. We'll be ready to go. But if you have any questions, there's anything you want to talk about today, we got no beaks. You can be beaks. You at home are beaks.
That's right. Bob's got his back seaters. I'm going to have my side seaters chime in in place of beaks being gone. So those side seaters chime on in with your question.
Yeah, we got to get. I forgot about that. We got to get him in one of these times too. Yeah. All right, and okay, Sheriff, the show is all yours.
All right, and then you want to hit OK on the screen in here. It looks like it's about to shut down.
Oh, sure. Yep, I'll be right in on that. So if you just give me a minute, I guess.
Okay. All right. You ready, Gabe?
All yours.
All right, guys. Thank you, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About It. Again, we're here every week from 4 to 5 to bring you the information that you need to know about the community. As you notice, I started this with my grassroots campaign. This allows me to get a chance to get to know you, the viewers, and you a chance to get to know me and ask some questions and talk about issues in the community. As you know, Mr. Beeks, my co-host, is not here today. He ran into some issues, and so he won't be joining us today. So you, the audience, get a chance to be my side seater today, my co-host in place of Mr. Beeks. Like I said before, we're here every week from 4 to 5. Every Wednesday, make sure you jump in and check us out. We'll be continuing the show even after the election. So, as you know, you can reach me at joelawman@hotmail.com. That's JOELAWMAN at hotmail.com. Or you can check us out on the webpage at banksforsheriff.com. That's BANKS 4 sheriff.com. Now, moving on today, as you know, we start milling in every show with that backpack. So I'm going to go ahead and hit you with that backpack. That backpack consists of making sure you have your driver's license and insurance with you before you enter that vehicle. Make sure you place it above the visor so it's easily accessible, so if stopped by law enforcement, it won't be confused for being a weapon. Remember to stay calm, let the officer go through his spiel, and as always, make it home to your loved ones. Same thing if you're walking down the street, make sure you got your driver's license or ID with you. Make sure it's easily accessible. Remember to stay calm, keep your hands where they can be seen, and allow the officer to go to his spiel. And as always, make it home to your loved ones. Got a good show for you today. We're in here solo dolo today, so we got a really good show. A lot of things to talk about today. Wanted to make sure that we led the show off today, just giving homage to the rapper who was killed over the week. His name is
Takeoff.
A part of the Amigos rap group. So, it was said that he was possibly shot accidentally or unintentionally during a dispute with an individual over a dice game in a bowling alley. Uniquely enough, on Halloween, and I think there was some thought that Halloween was also his birthday, so it was sounded like it was very tragic that this happened, and we had just a little bit of video that kind of brought that up, and we want to go ahead and play that for you real quick here. And
Yeah, I'll pull that up just
just
in a second.
a small warning: it is a little disturbing. There is some gunfire back there and people running and screaming. So, just a quick little blurb of kind of what took place on that fatal night.
All right, here we go.
And this is cell phone footage of the actual incident occurring. As you can see, there's Quavo. Right about here, that's when the shots are fired. And tragically enough, Takeoff ended up being the victim of a homicide. So, I mean, it's important when you look at things like this. These guys have given a lot back to the community. For him to, these young men to make it in the rap industry and still have such a tragic death is heartbreaking. This is, again, another example of the gun violence situation that's plaguing our nation, and that we need to find a way to deal with, definitely, in terms of people in our community and gun violence. Remember, if you got any questions, feel free to chime in. We'll do our best to answer those questions. Today, I'll do my best to answer those questions for you on your behalf, and we'll try and get things done that way. So
I got a question for you, Joe, if you don't mind.
Sure,
if I can
go
take
ahead.
some. So when you see that kind of stuff, because that's something that's obviously been talked about for years, is the hip hop community, their influence even on their community, right? Mm-hmm. And I've been kind of as we watched this beforehand, I'm sort of like heartened to see so much disgust and outrage for it, because sometimes people get cynical about it and go, hey, that's the streets or that's the game, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. What do you see that is? Do people reach out to those communities at all in law enforcement? Is there any bridge there, or is it always just adversarial and
I think law enforcement does make an effort to try and reach out to those gentlemen. It's a little bit harder because they are stars and icons to to get closer to them, to understand that, one, the message that we're sending into the community is we want to make sure our kids who are looking up to these individuals do see positive images, right, and they follow positive examples. But this is tragically enough, an example that gun violence anywhere, no matter what your status is, has the ability to have some serious repercussions. And this is going to be a tragic funeral, really tragic, because not only was he there on his birthday, it sounded like, but he wasn't even the intended individual, right? So, that's sad. It's really sad.
Do you see that as a, like, so for me, knowing you and gotten to know you over the last however long this has been, to me, your greatest strength, and I don't know if you guys talk about this on the campaign, I don't know if this has been highlighted, but I've dealt with you a lot. Your strength is absolutely meeting people and dealing with them on a real basis. I think you actually care, you actually connect, in a real way. You're not a politician, is what I would say. And I mean that in the best possible way, even though you're trying to be one right now. I don't mean it that way. But yeah, like, I mean, how much is community outreach a part of what you want to do?
It is a huge part. As I said before in the past, there has always been more community than it is law enforcement, and it does take a collaborative effort between community and law enforcement working together, and that's how we keep the community safe. We have to rebuild that trust in the community so that the community have trust for law enforcement, and that we can continue to work together to keep the community safe and get these guns off the street. and which is a pretty good segue into the fact that Minneapolis just did, a gun buyback here on the 29th, which was really good. And it sounds like that they were giving away gift cards, $150 for handguns and $250 gift cards for rifles or long guns, which was really unique because there were no questions asked. You could just turn the gun in, and it sounded like they may have collected over 400 guns turned in. So that's a real good success in terms of getting some firepower off the street and moves toward our ability to go ahead and keep the community safer as we move forward. We're trying to keep folks from dying here in the community. I like the fact that also that Minneapolis, since they've launched their Project Endeavor in the community, it sounds like they're reporting that gun violence may have dropped by almost 30% in the community. Even though we've had a few shootings here within recent, it sounds like that they're starting to have some impact. So kudos to those guys, and let's keep up the good work here in Minneapolis. And the community, we ask that you continue to work with law enforcement to try and get these guns off the street and to save our family members, because those are our family members that are out here in the community that are falling victim to gun violence, both adults and children. And so we want to make sure that we are all hands on deck, community and law enforcement involved to get these guns off the street and keep our people safe. So if you did miss that gun buyback program, I know at some point they're going to have another initiative to get some more guns bought in, and so make sure you guys stay tuned to that. And if you got some guns that you feel you want to get turned in, you can attend that, and you can also always contact your local police department and ask for ways to get firearms turned in off the street. So that's a good thing.
How do you feel about that sort of outreach, like gun buyback programs in general? Like, is that something that you would like to see more of, or what's the...
It is.
Any drawbacks?
I think it's any time that we can get firearms off the street, we do want to, hold folks accountable for deaths and stuff that occur. But if we can get those guns off the streets, no question asked, I would rather have those guns in hand so that we know that people aren't running around here with excessive firepower and utilizing those weapons in what would normally be most likely fist fights. People are dying from gun battles now. So I think that's a very good segue to solving the issue of lots of unknown guns in the street when we can't determine exactly where they're coming from. So that's great that people are coming forward to get those guns turned in, and I want to see us do that a couple of times. If we can get over 400 in the first go-around, there's a good chance that we can get a lot more in the next go-around. So please keep that up, and let's keep our heads up and keep looking for where the next gun buyback program is going to be at.
Are there other programs that are like that you like at all? Like, I'm trying to think of what sort of like popular outreach things there are that get in the community, and I guess.
I mean, we could definitely, we definitely want to make sure that the community is. I like the fact that the community is on board with the gift cards, right? And because when they do that, then that shows that businesses, they do care about what's happening. They do want to do their part in the community to keep people safe, and so that's a huge finance investment into keeping people safe. Is giving folks those gift cards in lieu of those guns being on the street. So that's a win-win for everybody. It really is. The businesses get a chance to write some funds off. Folks get a chance to do some shopping. There aren't any questions asked. You just turn the guns in and keep going, and that's really good.
How about the old? This is really going to out me as an old dude here, I guess. But when I was young, I guess from my view, obviously there's that adversarial relationship with police in certain communities now. Mm-hmm. When I was young, we had a cop named Gordy who handed out football cards. And, I mean, it really was, man. It was like Santa Claus is coming down the street, man. Because it'd be like, oh, you're going to go get some free shit from Gordy. Mm-hmm. And it really did change. When I look back at it, I feel like it really did change your relationship with with the police car, I guess. You know, like you didn't view it as a scary thing. My kids act scared of police. My kids know you. They know, you know, all these people who come through that I've got, and it's like, it's weird to me, you know.
Well, yeah, because, you know, you hear all the bad things on the news about law enforcement and the things that they're saying or accused of. And so you don't get a chance to hear all the good things that the cops are doing. And just so we are aware, there are good cops out there that are doing their job every day behind the badge and doing their best to make sure they shine, right? We do want to make sure that we celebrate those officers. We want to make sure that their endeavors are given notice. But at the same time, yeah, a lot of young folks that have had negative contact with law enforcement generally is surrounding issues with their families at home. And they see things like mom going to jail or dad being taken out of the house to jail, brothers or sisters. And so they equate that with something bad. And we want our youth to understand that, you know, the officers are there to help you and hopefully make things better, which is why it's important that we teach our officers to make sure that, you know, they're using discretion or authority. Is this an arrestable moment? Is it a teachable moment? Is it a possibility of us having to put cuffs on mom or dad where the kids aren't actually watching it to try to save some face for the parents? You know, it's not always possible in every situation, but whenever possible, let's try to handle that with kid gloves so that we don't leave a bad taste in the kids' mouths. And of course, you know, my thought also of trying to bring cop houses here to the metropolitan area gives kids a chance to be able to interact with police officers in a non-threatening environment, right? So they get a chance to know the officers by name, the officers get a chance to know them and the parents, and it does make the job a little bit easier when we know the people that we're dealing with.
What is it? So you said that's a cop house?
Yeah, cop houses are houses that are run by police officers. You're going to help kids with after-school activities, reading books, homework, maybe talk to them about issues that are arising at home, athletic activities, maybe take them on a few trips. And so you get a chance to interact with the kids, you know, in a non-threatening environment. And a lot of times, you know, they see cops and they're terrified of them, right, because they've heard bad things. But this chance, you know, they get a chance to say, hey, let me see the squad car. You know, what's your name? What do you actually do? What is it that cops do? You know, and so they get a chance to ask some questions, get to know the police officers by name, and it does make for better law enforcement.
Do we do the community basketball leagues here, or, you know, where they do the police run community leagues? Maybe that's PD rather than sheriff.
I think Minneapolis has the PPL.
Okay.
But it would be nice to see a sheriff athletic league, and I know my team and I had been working on the sheriff athletic league, and one of our big things were we had decided that if we got up and going, it couldn't just be like the police on one side and the civilians on the other side. It would have to be teams that consisted of both police officers and community members on the same teams, right? So it's kind of forcing you to kind of get to know each other, spend time with each other outside of just, you know, law enforcement.
It seems to me that that's just the answer on stuff, right? Just like a whole bunch of stuff like that, if you can incentivize it and whatever.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah. And then just a shout out to everyone. Comment below the video, and we will absolutely put it on screen, whatever your concerns are. What are the things you want to hear about?
Definitely. And, you know, it's great getting a chance to talk to the community, getting a chance to hear their views. I love being out talking to people about what their concerns are in the community. As you know, every day I'm out here knocking on doors, handing out flyers, shaking hands, and talking to people. And there is a concern that, you know, they want to see more police presence in the community. And talking to the folks in the area of 38th and Chicago, the George Floyd Square area, a lot of the community members there are really asking for a little bit more patrol from the community. They're a little afraid of the activity that happens there in the evening hours. So, you know, we'd like to see them get more policing over there. Hearing, you know, Charlie Adams, the commander over at the 4th Precinct, at the safety meeting in North High the other day, say, At one point he had 120 officers on the street, and now he's down to like 59 with 2 going on maternity leave. I mean, these guys are facing real number issues, and we definitely want to at least try and get bodies at the sheriff department that can help support those numbers. And so that's where I'm pushing for. Of course, it'll be one of those deals where we'll have to talk to the commissioners to explain and clarify why we need to expand our budget is already 128 million to a little bit more than what it is, because the big problem is that about 65 million of that is designated for the jails and court services, but we really need to be in a situation where we can respond proactively to assist the city of Minneapolis and any other cities for that matter effectively. I know that right now the sheriff department is trying to lend support wherever needed for those calls for assistance, but we do want to make sure that we're able to respond with a legitimate help to these organizations or departments to be able to keep people safe on the street. And real quick, I want to send a shout out to the Hennepin County dispatchers too, because I did get a couple of comments from the dispatching system this week, and the question was, how do you feel about fighting for the dispatchers to have better retirement plans? And so, just so folks are aware, I don't know if you knew it or not, but one of my first jobs in law enforcement was dispatching. In my mind, dispatching is an essential part of the job. They are, in fact, the lifeline of law enforcement officers on the street. They're the people that we talk to when we're dealing with individuals. They're the folks that take in your phone calls when you call for help. And a lot of times that's where the aid and assistance begins, is through those dispatchers. So in some cases, the dispatchers are a little bit more overworked and underpaid. For whatever reason, a lot of people don't apply for dispatching positions, and it's important that we definitely get more dispatchers in, but that we also make sure that they are getting good retirement packages, because remember, they do hear a lot of trauma on those phone lines, and they take in a lot of the those terrible calls that we get. And so, we want to make sure that we're taking care of them properly, and so that they understand that they're just as important as the rest of the folks out there that are doing the job. So just want to send that quick little shout out to the dispatchers, both in Hennepin County and around it, right? So just getting that in there. So with that being said, looks like we're about at that halfway pot, huh? Already. So again, let me hit you with that backpack one more time. That backpack consists of making sure you have your driver's license and insurance with you before you get in that vehicle. Make sure you place it above the visor so it's easily accessible. Make sure that you keep your hands where they can be seen. Allow the officer to go through his spiel, and as always make it home to your loved ones. Same thing when you're walking down the street. Make sure you got your driver's license or ID with you. Make sure it's easily accessible. Keep your hands where they can be seen. Remember to stay calm. Let the officer go through his spiel, and as always make it home to your loved ones. So again, November 8th is right around the corner here, guys, just right around the corner. So I just want to make sure that we are registered to vote, that your friends are registered to vote, other family members are registered to vote. So it's important that you know where you need to go. Check with your election committee or Hennepin County campaign committee to election committee, should I say? Yeah, Hennepin County election committee, to make sure that you know exactly where you need to go to place your vote. And that's going to be on November the 8th. And as you know, early voting started on September 23rd. It technically ends on November the 7th. They wanted you to make sure that you gave enough time for mail-in ballots. They said 5 to 7 days. So if you haven't mailed it in now, it's probably in your best interest to just kind of wait and actually go in person and cast your vote so that your vote gets counted. So make sure that you know exactly where you need to go to place your vote. Real quickly here, I want to send a shout out to Major Dewana Witt, who is, my adversary, or we would say not adversary, but my challenger, right? There we go. That's a better word. My challenger, Major Witt, is at home this week. She couldn't be out on the trail with us, and she's recovering from COVID-19. So we just want to make sure that we send our prayers out to Major Witt to get better soon, and wishing her the best and keeping in our prayers that she makes a speedy recovery and is back out here on the trail with me challenging for the sheriff's position. So, Major Witt, we're praying for you. Keep you in our prayers. Now, with that being said, we're going to move on to other events that have been happening in the community. Besides the gun buyback, I know that was this past week. There was some talk about 4 people being shot over a 12-hour period, one of them fatally turning out to be the 72nd homicide in Minneapolis. So, again, it comes back to the community and gun violence, man. And I think everybody I talk to wants to be able to be safe in the county. It's really important that if we see something, that we say something, have that conversation with your kids, talk to your loved ones about turning those guns in, and doing your best to keep us all safe, because right now gun violence is at an all-time high throughout the country, and as you can see, that this is a major problem. People are feeling unsafe about leaving their homes and going out for just regular activities in the community, and so this is a major concern that we have in place. And so I want to make sure that we are banding together, both law enforcement and the community, through collaborative efforts to make sure that we are working to solve this. So a little bit about my campaign and the process of what we've been doing here is that, this has been a great run. I just wanted to make sure that we told everybody thank you this week for all of the hard work. There are so many people who worked hard behind the scenes to make sure that our independent campaign saw the light of day and that we drew some notoriety. We were able to squeak by in the primaries, and it was only because you, the people, came out and made your voices heard. And as you know, I'm always out in the community, working with the people on the daily basis, talking to people about concerns that they have, trying to find ways to make life just a little bit more livable for them that each day. But the people came out, and I want to thank everybody and let them know that we're continuously working to find ways to make life better in the community, and let you know that it's important that you do get out. Your voice is important that your voice is heard, because believe it or not, some people feel like, they're not going to make a difference. I'm just one person. But let me tell you, every person counts. Every person makes a difference. Everybody gets a seat at the table, not just one or two people, but everybody gets a voice at the table, because whatever happens in our community affects us all. And so if you want to learn more about our campaign page and how you can be a part of it, you can make sure that you go to banksforsheriff.com. That's BANKS, the number 4, sheriff.com. Again, that's BANKS, the number 4, sheriff.com. You can leave contact information there. You can ask questions. I'll respond to. If you don't get me there, you can always email me at joelawman@hotmail.com. That's joelawman@hotmail.com, or you can reach me at 763-221-4724. Again, that's 763-221-4724. On that page, you can also donate. We never get enough funds to keep getting the word out to you guys, and so it's important that you go on, check us out, and find out a little bit more about what it is that we're trying to do here in the community and the changes that we want to see. My campaign is big on transparency, accountability. We want to make sure that, we are allowing our law enforcement agencies to be transparent. We want to make sure that, we're not doing things that are not being held accountable for. Sheriff Department is going to be making sure that on my watch that we're checking in with those departments to make sure they are meeting those standards and that they are being transparent in the community and that they're not, abusing people throughout the community. We're going to be pushing a software into the community that would allow us is to see what's happening in real time. It'll also allow you to see what's happening in real time. You'll get a chance to ask questions, forward complaints, things of that nature. We'll be having that stuff reviewed by a combination of civilians and law enforcement, reviewing those issues. And if there's a need to do some follow-up with charges or arrests, that stuff will be done by the sheriff department and then submitted onto the post board, so that they can either decide to reprimand or remove licenses, which will keep officers from leaving one department and going to the next. And for the first time in I think in Hennepin County, I will be pushing for a unified code of behavior throughout the county that hasn't been seen before. And so that's really important. We're going to be attaching a deputy to each one of those agencies so that they can actually have someone to communicate with in real time. It's gonna push the budget a little bit, but we're gonna do our best to make sure that that happens. We want to have a little bit more transparency in what's happening inside the Hennepin County Jail, with the fact that there's been some issues with folks dying inside the jail. We want to be taking a closer look at that, trying to see that there are better ways to ensure that that's happening and holding folks accountable and making sure that we're following up with the community so the community can decide that we're doing a good job, but also be able to see that through clean eyes we're making some headway.
Joe, can I step in and honk you off here for just a minute for the people? Because I think one of the things, you and I had to talk about transparency. Mm-hmm. And as you know, I'm working on a documentary where I'm having issues with another law enforcement entity that we're not going to refer to here.
Right.
But it's the first time in my life that I've experienced a lack of transparency with law enforcement. I've never had a terrible issue with them, I guess. I've made some mistakes, but nothing like that, right? Mm-hmm. And you hear people talk about transparency. I think it's worth you sort of detailing a little bit more about that software, because I thought that was an incredible idea. And then, you even talked about, and we don't know that this will be the case, but that you had talked about possibly having this podcast be an extension of your availability to the citizens, right? Right. That it's like putting yourself forward, being available, talking to people. You are that guy, and I just think it's, if anyone's listening who's undecided, man, I think what really sets you apart is your energy and your optimism. And it's not business as usual at all.
No, it's definitely not. The people want to see, and they need to see definite change. We have a system in place that we know has not worked properly, and it's partially in part because the folks that are in play haven't necessarily had that checks and balances that they should have followed through with the checks and balances, and they didn't. And as a result of it, you had agencies that kind of felt like they didn't have anyone that they had to worry about, kind of that big brother over the shoulder concept. And we have to make sure that we're using the checks and balance systems that are in place, that have already been in place, that we just haven't been using. And in terms of the software with the transparency, here's what's unique about it. So initially, my team was trying to develop a software that we could utilize that would allow us to have access to this information across the board. And the first thing that came up, people said, well, what happens when these agencies say we don't have it in the budget? So I looked at that and I said, well, here's the deal. How can we get around this? How can we fix this? And so uniquely enough, there's a software in place that the sheriff department actually is currently using just specifically for the sheriff department. So I had taken some initiative and contacted those folks directly and said, listen, do we have the ability to take this, countywide? We don't want to have to tip the budget and reinvent the wheel. If we have something that's working through success, can we take this countywide? And the guy told me absolutely. And in fact, he's on the 4th. We're meeting to do a demo so that he can kind of really go through how and what that would look like, and talking generically about what the expense would be. But the goal is that the sheriff department would pick up the cost to implement this software in each agency. It's already in place, so we pretty much be adding more users to the programming, right? Now, what's unique about this software is that not only will the supervisors be able to enter information, but peers, right? Peers will be able to enter information either anonymously or anonymously, and that's great, because when that happens, then you're getting information from everybody at all levels. And so there's some pre-warnings built in to kind of flag situations for folks to look at. And so I really think that this software is going to be really good. It generates reports that we can get to the community so they can see kind of who's in trouble, who's not in trouble. And that's
how would it actually work? I'm sorry. Like, just how would the average citizen, what would they be going in there to look at or see or whatever?
Well, I think they would be going in there. Most of the citizens kind of want to see who's got complaints, right? Mm-hmm. And kind of what those complaints are. And that information should be readily available. Because what happens is when they can pull that information, or when we can generate that information at a site that they can actually see it at in real time, then let's say like somebody in Richfield has a problem with the guy, and this guy left Richfield and went to Minneapolis. Right, and they begin to see that there's a guy who's had a problem in a couple different departments. They can get that information to us. Or if Richfield has an officer that has some behavioral issues and several citizens are having a problem, they can get that information to the sheriff department. Because a lot of what I've been hearing from folks is that, man, the sheriff department don't even have a place where you can actually go to and file a formal complaint. And so I was like, well, we definitely need to have some place so people can go, I can file a formal complaint. But most importantly, how many people didn't know that they could file a complaint against a police officer with the sheriff department? Most people thought they were stuck with the local police department, and after that, it's it, right? They didn't know that, if I can't get resolved here at the local PD level, then I can always bump this up to the sheriff department, and then additionally to the county prosecutor's office as well. So it's just making sure that people understand what's happening, how, and the pathways of making that happen. And the good thing of it is this software not only tracks bad behavior, but it also tracks good behaviors too. So if there's accommodations or good things that are being said from the community or the agencies about these officers, that those things are seen as well.
Yeah, and also, so I produce other political talk shows and stuff, and I was really happy to see there was one where it's both sides of the aisles, and they were talking, they had political people on, they're asking the issues, and it was almost overwhelming. I was kind of surprised and also happy to see this. Overwhelmed on both sides. The number one issue for everyone was corruption, basically. Like just, not just in police department, in politics, in everything, that there's this overwhelming feeling right now that you can't trust our institutions. And I think it's awesome that you came up with that plan, that you even are putting energy in that direction, Because it should be available, man.
It really should be, because we do say that most of the stuff the cops deal with is supposedly public knowledge, right? And so it's usually not until we start asking questions that now there is a policy in place that we have to go through and 5 hoops that we need to jump. But I think it's important that we are making it as transparent as possible so that people can gauge for themselves if they're getting good service or not. The job itself is working with the people. Our job is to take care of the people and be guardians of their liberties, right? We're guardians of those of our community's liberties, and we need to be mindful of that. And so, I always tell people all the time, I don't really get the hostility that officers have when they pull people over or when they're dealing with people, because you are the one who initiated the contact. And if you didn't want to make the traffic stop, then why make it? right? So it is incumbent on people that to take in this job that they need to understand that coming through the door, you need to be a people's person. And I know we encounter and we see some things that are terrible that people can do to each other, and that's a mental health thing. But we need to make sure that we're getting early intervention for that stuff right there, because you hear cops say all the time that mental health piece is an important part of this job. You have to be mentally healthy to handle this job. You have to be able to balance that with personal life, because we're talking about people, right? We're officers are human, and so we do see issues. But we also have personal lives at home too. Looks like we got a question.
Yeah, and this is one that I actually have thought about, that I wonder about. It says, what do you think about qualified immunity for law enforcement? I've heard that debated, and I don't really understand what, I believe it's you can't, I don't know. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, the qualified immunity basically keeps officers from being sued as long as what they were doing was in the scope of their jobs, right? And if I was chasing somebody in my squad car, and as long as I was within the policies and procedures of that, if in the process I end up slamming into a citizen with my squad car and that person dies or gets really injured as a result of that, then they can maybe go after the department because they employed me, but they can't sue me personally.
Are they trying to get rid? Are there people trying to get rid of that? Is that
there are some people that are kind of looking to get rid of that?
Is that realistic?
It's something that I have been looking at too, because the question is, how high does qualified immunity go to? And you got to remember that it is affected by our courts, our judges, our attorneys who could make mistakes that are semi-covered with that. But I also hear. And initially, you've always also heard me say too, in liking it to having like a separate insurance, if you would,
right,
to offset the cost. I always said maybe something similar to like a malpractice insurance to kind of offset some of that cost. Here's where I think the fine line would be. I think that we may not want to remove the qualified immunity as much as we may want to enhance it, right? Now, I don't know what that would look like initially, but it could be a layer of enhancement. Like, so you're not sued directly, but a part of your insurance, personal insurance, would kick in to offset some of the costs that the agency that employed you incurred, right?
Right. So it's about putting some what do you call it? Responsibility on the officer himself.
So
right?
We're not going to say we're suing you personally, but at a certain level, your insurance that you're paying for, and I guess we would qualify you to a certain amount of insurance, would also contribute to paying out if there was a finding of wrongdoing, right?
As an example, if you said, okay, it's all the same qualified immunity, nothing changes except if you are convicted for brutality, for instance.
Right.
Then it can come out of your personal insurance after a certain level, maybe.
Yeah, I think that would be something worth looking at, because the problem of it is that let's take it back to who's actually paying for these issues. Even though there's a finding of guilt in the situation of Derek Chauvin, right?
Mm-hmm.
The taxpayer still footed the bill. So we got traumatized by what happened to Mr. Floyd, right? But then the citizens of Minneapolis were re-traumatized by having to pay out $27 million, because then their taxes are going to go up. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Because that money's got to come from the citizens. And so it's like they've been re-traumatized all over again. So in essence, Mr. Chauvin went to prison as a result of that. But not only did the taxpayers foot the bill for the actual trial, which was millions of dollars, right? Mm-hmm. And then we also kicked in the bucks to pay off for what he did wrong as well. And he didn't actually have any financial liability, there. And so those are the things we have to look at, because we're the ones having to pay for those mistakes. And so there's got to be some kind of accountability somewhere. And it's worth visiting to kind of see what the language would look like once we hammer that out.
Do you know the numbers at all? Like, so, it's funny, as you just described that right there. I think, like, I've had issues with, I don't know why more politicians aren't, when we talk about the policing, we make it this stupid, you're either with them or against them thing, which I think is just so stupidly politicized, right? Where really it should just be like, hey, the way that we're policing right now is costing our city, whatever, $40 million this year extra in lawsuits. How do we address this? To me, that's a bipartisan issue.
I think, you have to look, this is how I look at it. I look at it like customer service and marketing, right? If 10 people are telling 50 people that they got bad service, we're going to lose money, right? Mm-hmm. So we need to do a better marketing. Like, hey guys, come here. We've made some better changes. We're going to do things differently. We're going to get your buy-in from the community, right? Put a drop box out there. Let people tell you kind of what they want to see change in the community. But not only that, also make sure they understand the process of bringing about those changes, right? Because that's an important piece. How many people don't know how a bill becomes a law, right? And they don't know how to change policy within their city. You know what I'm saying? And so that's an important piece, to be able to bring that to people, to say, listen, if you're not happy with the way the police are doing or with the laws they're enforcing, here's how you can change that. Here's how we organize, create a plan, and follow through to bring about those changes. It's very unique to understand that today, even after the tragedy of George Floyd, and I always tell people there's 3 years, there's a 3-year window to, after a major tragedy like that, to implement change, right? Because the first year is oh my God, look what just happened, right? The second year is, how can we really change this, fix this so it doesn't happen again? You know what I mean? And then that third year, you have to come through the door with, here's our plan to change it, and here's our plan to actually implement that change. Or if not, you're right back to Rodney King, where the guy gets arrested and it's swept under the carpet and it's back to business as usual. So that's kind of the way I see it. We're on the bubble now. We have to get some kind of law on the book that would prevent these actions from happening again. And then what does it look like to hold leadership accountable when you have a situation like Derek Chauvin, where people are out here that are having bad behavior, is going unchecked, and they continue to put the community at risk by putting in a guy that they know historically, by watching his records. They see his file. They see the issues. They know historically that he has had issues with excessive force, and you continue to put him in the community. So it's not what if, but when, because it's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? You can see that this guy is heading down the wrong road, and eventually it's going to go too far. And so who do we hold accountable besides Derek Chauvin? What about the leadership that was in place that didn't even take any action? So, and I always tell people, if you are not really sure about where you stand on excessive force issues or transparency in agencies of any kind, think about the fact of the story that was put out about the death of George Floyd, and then recall the video and ask yourself, did they match up? Because had that young lady not recorded that video, there's a good chance that Derek Chauvin would still be in a squad car terrorizing the citizens.
I'm looking this up now because I don't remember the first story that came out, and you're fascinating me. What was it? I'm sure it wasn't, that it didn't match.
It was more like he had passed away on the way to the hospital or something to that fact, from an altercation while dealing with the police department, not the fact that he was deceased at the scene. And anyone who saw the video saw a lifeless body leave that ground. So it wasn't that he died on the way. There was a good chance that Mr. Floyd was deceased at the scene. And so I thought to myself, wow, 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 wow. And then I understood why people were angry, because when you look at the message that went out versus kind of, what was actually seen, it's like, whoa, that don't match up at all. Right? And
And that's the issue, right? Like, I
that
mean, that really is the
that
whole damn ball game. Just
that is
about.
the issue, because I mean, Mr. Floyd could have been any one of us, right?
Right. And if people don't think that they need to be responsible for that, if anyone in the world, basically, if you think you can hurt people and then just tell some bullshit and move on.
Yeah, I mean, when you can simply asphyxiate a gentleman who was in handcuffs, and I still don't know how you justify that, because we teach cops when the cuffs go on, the battle's over, right?
Yeah.
Why do you have an issue with a gentleman who says that, hey, I'm claustrophobic, I don't want to sit in the squad car? If the guy didn't want to go in the squad car and you felt that there was an issue, right? Because we've been trained to deal with behaviors. So if you felt that there was an issue, that you thought the guy was even impaired in the least way, why not have the paramedics come out and check the guy out? Why not let him lean against the squad car? Right? If he's talking to you, leaning against the squad car, he's calm, he's relaxed, and you're waiting for the paramedics, someone with a higher medical level of training, to evaluate him, then they decide, okay, you know what, this guy may have ingested too much or whatever, and he needs to go to the hospital, or we think this guy is good to go. At the very least, though, at least take the time to take care of the guy. He's in handcuffs, right? And you have enough bodies there to deal with him in a safe fashion. So that's...
And I've got the original report on screen here just to see it. And yeah, two officers arrived and located the suspect, a male believed to be in his 40s, in his car. He was ordered to step from his car. After he got out, he physically resisted. Officers were able to get him into handcuffs and noted he appeared to be suffering medical distress. Officers called for an ambulance. He was transported to Hennepin County Medical Center by ambulance, where he died a short time later. Yeah. Holy smokes.
Now, when you look at that, this is something that obviously a supervisor approved as a statement, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, transparency and accountability is key. I'm not saying that people aren't human and we won't make mistakes, right? But when they happen, we need to own up to them. We need to figure out why it went wrong to ensure that it does not happen again, and we need to make sure that it doesn't. And so that's the level of transparency and accountability that we must hold all of our officers to. We must. We have to. Because these are the people in our community that we're entrusting our safety to. These are our guardians. These are the people that are up when we're asleep at night, and we sleep well because we know that they're up and out there protecting us, right? And when it gets to the point where you're in your car and you don't know if you're going home or to the hospital or the morgue from a contact with law enforcement, it's an issue. And it only becomes a great issue when we don't address it, when we try to pretend like, no, it didn't really happen. No, something bad happened here, and we need to address that. And so, unfortunately, it was my belief that the Floyd homicide was the final straw in a line of other issues that had occurred with other officer-involved deaths, and issues like Terrence Franklin and Jamar Clark in Minneapolis. And so, these were all leading up situations where it was questionable as whether or not officers did the right thing or not. And so, it's important that Minneapolis, or any police department for that matter, is not investigating their own use of force issues alone. Right? We need to have a neutral set of eyes that are actually either investigating together or doing a parallel investigation to make sure that everything's clear and transparent, right?
Actually, Joe, on that note, my wife suspected me of cheating on her.
Yeah.
And I just told her, don't worry about it. I'm looking into it. And I'll let you know if I find any wrongdoing. And I take this very seriously.
Yeah.
And if not, I'm even going to have one of my friends come over here and take a look at it just to let you know that I'm serious about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how well.
Yeah, and that sounds terrible, don't it? And
Right.
Can you imagine being the loved one of someone and people are telling you, well, we can't really go into great details, but your family member is deceased. The normal Joe wants to know, what do you mean? What happened? Right? What caused my loved one to be deceased? And they don't want to hear, well, we can't go into great detail. If you can't tell me, who can you tell?
Man, I wish that we could go back to the whole campaign over again and just talk about transparency. Because now, as you talk about it here, and I know you've been banging the drum the whole time, but to me now it's like, shit, that's the whole world. That's all. That's what we need it with our politicians, with our, police department. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, it's important, and so this is why I ran my campaign independently, because I wanted to make sure that I was able to bring all parties to the table, both Republican, Democrats, and independents, because we have to have that transparency piece. It just has to be, we have a system in place that we know for years now has gone unchecked. So when you see that, you have to say to yourself, modern policing includes shaking up a few things. People will say all the time, well, it's worked this long. Why change it? What do you think you can do to make a difference? You're not going to change anything. I hear that one all the time. But we'll never know until we actually try, right? And so I'm willing to get in there and put in the work to try and make that difference, to try and make sure that it's transparent, to make sure that if you have an issue with a police officer, that you have some place to take that issue to and know that you're going to get some kind of resolve, and that people are going to be held accountable for what happened to you or your loved one. And that's not to throw cops under the bus, but we do have a level of expectation of what officers should be in terms of behavior-wise when dealing with us. We know that that when people are upset, that they're going to have certain behaviors, and we have to give them a certain level of tolerance because they're in a heated situation at that time, usually traumatic or dramatic. They're in a situation that requires us to give them a little more leeway. I'll say to my veteran officers and my new officers, do your best to slow things down. Slow them down so that you don't come in and meet somebody always at a level of yelling and screaming. You bring it down. Bring it down. Calm them down. Do your best to leave things better than they were before you came. And always, 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 always see life as the most important thing in the process, because before you make a decision to take somebody's life, please do your best to consider options that you have at your dispense, even if it means disengaging. If disengaging keeps the community safe, keeps the individual alive, sometimes it's okay to disengage. And I know we teach officers to have control of environments and the scene, but control doesn't always mean physical control. Let's just use a little bit more verbal communication. Let's get a little bit more information when we're dealing with people, and let's give people the benefit of the doubt in as best we can. Now, when we're dealing with violent offenders, of course, we'll have to meet them at a level of force. But once we have them under control, let's still leave them with the dignity and respect that we should give all people in the community, right? And the battle's over, and let's go back to showing them that respect as a citizen. So Let's not be accosting people in handcuffs. Let's not be taking those shots. Let's make sure that our peers in the squad cars are holding each other accountable, right? If you know that your partner's, a little riled up and out of control, let's intervene. Intervene. Because the goal of the officer is to take care of people when they can't take care of themselves. I submit to you, if someone is in handcuffs and your partner is slapping him and he can't throw his hands up to defend himself or protect himself from an injury that otherwise wouldn't have happened, then you didn't do your job. You didn't do your job, and you're just as guilty as the person who threw the punch. And so, that's the level of accountability that we want to have in our community. Under the same token, we do want to hold our citizens accountable, but we also want to make sure that they understand we don't have to arrest everybody in every situation. Unless there's a warrant on for your arrest or a body on the ground, there are certain circumstances in which we do have the ability to give people a pass, if you would. Make it a learning situation. And so there are some times when you can give a guy a ride home versus writing them a DWI citation. There's times when you can actually, educate people on where they can get their license back valid so that they are in compliance. We definitely want to empower the community through education to understand what their rights are when dealing with law enforcement on both sides. So that's kind of where I wanted to make sure that, people understand where I stand, what I'm trying to implement in this county, and understand it is going to sound strange to you and police officers because there's been such a lack of checks and balances in our system that it does look like, what are you talking about, man? That's something different. And that's exactly why I'm the person for this job, because I'm doing something different to make things better. And yes, I am going to reach some opposition because they've been getting it done the way they did it for so long and not being held accountable. But we are definitely going to be holding our officers accountable. We're going to have a lot more fair and impartial policing, but we're going to have purposeful, proactive policing in the community so that cops are not just cruising the streets at 35, 40 miles an hour, but we're getting outside those squad cars. We're interacting with our citizens. We're saying hello. I'm going to be challenging those guys to walk up and meet a new citizen every day. So that is an important factor because people need to feel like the cops are approachable too, right? And so citizens, don't be afraid. Challenge yourselves. Go out and meet the cops in your community. Figure out who your neighbors are. Find out who lives in your community. Get to know them. Get to build a relationship so that if a tragedy was to hit, who lives next door to you, right? Who lives across from you? And their routine and how to get in touch with them if something is awry.
Yeah. And hey, Joe, I don't usually honk off my own production abilities like this during the show, but check that out. Is that cool?
Yes, it is.
Why did it take me so long to figure that out? But yeah, I want to say on Joe's behalf, man, he's the real deal. I met him a while ago. He really, won us over right away. I think Joe knows by now I'm not the most super pro cop guy in the world, and it's like he really. If you were, but I also am reasonable. I'm not a defund the police person. I'm not.
Right.
We need police. So if you're a person like me at all who is, you believe in reform, you think there needs to be big changes, but you also believe, hey, we also need those guys, and they haven't been all wrong either.
Yeah.
I think he's a great solution. For everybody.
And let's just tell our city's leaderships, listen, guys. We're big enough to handle what our needs are. Don't just keep telling us that we're short manpower. Tell us specifically what you need to get the job done, because then we can help you, right? We can work with the community to get more funds into the budget if we need that to hire more officers. We can do a better job if we need to hire people separately from the department to go out and do your recruiting. We can hire a PR person to really help out with getting PR done at the department level. But we have to be honest about the needs. Let's stop saying, oh, well, we're short, that's why things are bad. Let's say, listen, we put put 15 officers over here. We really need 25. And tomorrow we're going to need 15 more over there. And here's what we actually have. Tell us the actual numbers so that we can understand it better. Because when you say that you only have a certain amount of officers and we see guys sitting at construction sites kind of watching a guy dig a hole and our response time is down, it does draw the wrong conclusions, right? So let's be honest about what those needs are, and let's really work hard with the community to address things and make things better. So we're getting down here a little bit over actually. And I'm going to go ahead and hit you with this last backpack before I get out of here. Backpack consists of making sure you have your driver's license and insurance with you before you get in that car. Make sure you place it above the visor so it's easily accessible. Remember to stay calm. Let the officer go through his spiel, and as always, always, always make it home to your loved ones. Same thing when you're walking down the street. Make sure you got your driver's license with you or your ID. Make sure it's easily accessible. Keep your hands where they can be seen. Let the officer go through his spiel. Try to stay calm, and as always, 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 make it home to your loved ones. Again, guys, it's been a great show. It's been a wonderful campaign. The election is November the 8th, so make sure that you're registered to vote, that you get out and vote. My name is Joe Banks. I'm running for Hennepin County Sheriff. I started this show to give me the ability to reach you, the citizens, and you can learn a lot about me, a chance for me to learn a lot about you and talk about issues that we see in the community. This will hopefully help me when I'm moving forward to make changes in the community. Even after this election, I'm going to keep this show going because I think it's an important insight to people to have a platform to come out and discuss what's happening in their community and try to get resources to solve that. Kudos to my co-host Beeks, who couldn't be here today. You guys know he's in charge of security over at Westport Properties. He also does firearms training, and you can reach Beeks at 612-978-6066 or abeeks@westpointminnesota.com. So make sure you reach out to Westport Security with all your security.
Beeks is a real one too.
Yes, he is. Beeks is a great guy. Yeah. And so, like I said, guys, I don't know what else to say because it's been such a great time. You guys have been great chiming in, giving questions, and it's always stopping by and being up front. I'm glad to be able to talk to you guys and get your point of view on things. So with that being said, we'll be here next week at 4 p.m. Make sure you check in and check us out. Beeks will be back joining us, and we'll be on hopefully talking about the election results, right? And how we're going to be working our plan to make Hennepin County safer for us all.
Let's go, Sheriff.
With that being said, guys, thanks a lot for all your support. My name's Joe Banks, and that side chair is Antoine Beeks. And I just talked about it.